I am Dr. Carla Evers, Vice Chair of the Commission on School Accreditation. This special called meeting of the Commission on School Accreditation is being held today, Tuesday, February the 11th, 2025, at 8:35 via teleconference from the Senator Grace Ferris Boardroom, 359 Northwest Street, Jackson, Mississippi. The meeting is being live streamed via the MDE YouTube channel. An audio recording is being made of this meeting, and minutes of this meeting will be recorded. As I call your names of the commission members, please state the location of your presence for this meeting. Dr. Kelly Barfield. Present, New York City. Anthony Bryant.
Present, Tupelo, Mississippi.
And I am in Pass Christian, Mississippi. Reginald Goins.
Present, Sparrow, Mississippi.
Patrice Guilfoyle.
Present, Jackson, Mississippi.
Jeremy Ham. Jeremy Ham. Tony Kurth. Present, Brandon, Mississippi. Pamela Manners is absent. Aisha Maxwell. Aisha Maxwell. Tasiki Pettis. Dr. Scott Rhines.
Present, Brandon, Mississippi.
Brad Stevens.
Present, Smithville, Mississippi.
Dr. Sarah Wilborn. Present, Ellisville, Mississippi. Thank you. And Ingrid Williams. Present, Clinton, Mississippi. Thank you. A quorum of the commission is present for the purpose of conducting this meeting. This meeting is called to order at 8:37 a.m. First item is adoption of the agenda. Commission members, you have received a copy of the agenda. Please note this is a special called meeting, and therefore the only business that can be transacted is that which has been specified in the call of this meeting. At this time, I will entertain a motion for approval of the agenda. Please identify yourself for the record. Kelly Barfield, so moved. Thank you, Barfield. I have a second. Tony first second. Thank you. It's been moved on this, I'm sorry, any opposers? I'm sorry, y'all excuse me. Any discussion? It's been moved by Ms. Barfield and seconded by Ms. Kirsch. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposers? That motion carries. Next on the agenda, we have discussion. Proposal to suspend the personnel edit review process for the 2024-2025 school year and hold schools and districts harmless for noncompliance based on MSIS 2.0. Dr. Vanderford will present this information to you in place of Dr. Evans. Dr. Vanderford.
Thank you. Good morning. John Craman and I are here today on behalf of Dr. Evans, who is traveling and unable to be here this morning. This item, as many of you are aware, on an annual basis, the Office of Accreditation conducts personnel edit reviews from the data that is from previously in legacy MSIS, the final entry of data in MSIS at the end of December, and then districts are notified of any areas of non-compliance, and they have several months in which to clear those deficiencies or flags, as we often refer to them, before the annual statuses are assigned in the fall. So this year, we're asking permission from the commission and then on to the state board later this month that the commission approves to suspend that personnel review for the current school year during our transition from legacy MSIS to MSIS 2.0. I'm going to allow Mr. Kramer shortly to just give you a little bit of background and talk about that transition briefly. But what we are finding is that some items that in the past should have flagged in legacy MSIS did not. And maybe some items now are flagging in this new process that should not. So both issues are happening. And we feel that we need some time. There's been revisions that have been made to the work area code report, to the course code reports, all through the data governance committee. And we feel like we just need some more time to ensure that all of the business rules are correct as we transition into MSIS 2.0 and that districts are receiving appropriate flags. Before I turn it over to Mr. Kramer, I do want to emphasize that this is not like the suspension that was granted during COVID, where districts were not monitored at all or held accountable to compliance. It's the expectation that districts are aware of what you currently have that's required in work area codes and course codes, and that you ensure that your teachers are appropriately licensed and endorsed based on the information that you have. And we just also have districts that have been required to submit human capital plans because they know they have teacher vacancies or teachers that are filling positions that do not hold the appropriate license and endorsements. And this is not a reset for those districts that currently have human capital plans on file. We will continue to receive, to monitor the implementation of those. So I just want to be clear that this is not an opportunity to reset. And this will also not have any impact on teachers that may be under a provisional license where they have 3 years to become appropriately licensed through an alternate route path or whatever. We're not suspending any of those rules as well. So just wanted to make that point of clarity there, that there will be districts that are held accountable. And if a district is subject to an on-site review, we would also conduct those on-site reviews in the manner in which we previously have conducted those. Dr. Malone, did I miss anything before I turn that over to Mr. Kramer to just talk a little bit about? And then
They're still expected to comply, and that they are still subject to monitoring otherwise.
okay, all right, Mr. Kramer.
Sure. So it's a pleasure to be here this morning to talk a little bit about MSIS with you all. MSIS, the legacy MSIS, was a 20-year-old, 25-year-old now system that lived apart from or detached from district systems of both their student information system and their personnel systems. And for the last 25 years, what districts would do is extract data out of their systems, build files, and send those files to the legacy MSIS. In addition to being old, the legacy MSIS was also poorly documented. So it was often difficult to understand why or what the system was checking for. And part of the decision of our state board and the superintendent and the legislature was to rebuild the system ground up and have it not only modern, but aligned with our rules that we have here at the department, and to read the data directly out of these local systems. So whereas in the past, districts would extract files and then submit them separately to us and massage those files to make sure that they were compliant with what the MSIS requirements were. Today, this school year, beginning this school year, the new MSIS reads directly out of these local systems. So every night the data is exchanged between MSIS and the personnel and student information systems in the districts. There is no human intervention that can alter or otherwise massage the files that are coming over. So it is a very immediate and direct feedback then to the districts of where there are issues with the rules. So that's one key piece. The second piece is that, as Dr. Vanderford mentioned, throughout this process, and this is a multi-year process, my shop, the Office of Technology and Strategic Services, worked with the program offices, including accreditation, through our data governance process to define the rules that we are meant to enforce in the system in terms of checking the data to see yes or no against whatever rules there are. That been a very deliberate and long process with good documentation and then implementation in the new system. So what that has revealed to us is that there are some incongruities between how districts manage their data and how that data reflects the operational realities on the ground. And where we are starting to see conflict is between the rules that we've programmed into MSIS and the data that are being submitted, whether or not they are a fair or accurate representation of what is operationally in place. And we can get into some of the details on some of those nuanced questions. The third thing is that the districts themselves, in terms of managing their personnel and student information systems, were detached from the old legacy MSIS. So the way that they managed their data was sort of somewhere between their operational realities and what they determined was necessary to get the data submitted successfully to the Department of Education through old MSIS. So we were discovering not only questions about our business rules and how they're documented and how they're enforced, but we're also learning about how the data themselves are managed because we have that very immediate view of the data as it lives and resides in these local student information systems and other HR systems and other systems that the districts maintain. And so that noise that we're starting to discover is really this tension between an operational reality, how the data are stored locally, and what we're enforcing in terms of business rules or our accreditation rules through the new MSIS. And we've been spending months now going back and forth trying to understand the implications, and the decision or the information or the emails that we sent out to districts to give them some guidance as to how to navigate through the accreditation is really what led us to here, and the need to really examine this and make sure that what we have is correct, accurate, reasonable, and compliant with the rules. And we just have to figure out how to iron these wrinkles out. And I think that's a fair read on where we are. Deborah, did I miss anything? Okay. All right, so I'll stop there and see if there's any questions or discussion. Thank you.
Are there any? Hearing none, we'll move to item 4. It's for action. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the request to the State Board of Education to suspend the personnel edit review process for the 2024-2025 school year for the following process standards of the Mississippi Public School Accountability Standards 2024 and hold schools and districts harmless for noncompliance based on MSIS 2.0 data. Randy.
Good morning, Vice Chair Evers, members of the commission, and Dr. Malone. Every year we come to the Accreditation Commission asking to make revisions that are needed for the following year's Mississippi Public School Accountability Standards. These are revisions to the 2024 standards, which will be written into the 2025 standards. As stated in the item, we have articulated where in the standards, particularly the appendices, these suggested revisions are. We're going to begin first with Appendix A5. A5 is the portion of the accountability standards that talk about options in lieu of the end-of-course assessment. The two changes that we're recommending here is that we take the Mississippi, any reference to the Mississippi CPAS off of Appendix A5. We held on to that for a few years because we realized that we did have students that could be applicable to, but we realize now, starting in 25-26, that those students will have well graduated and moved on, so we are removing reference to CPAS. Perkins 5 sent us on another route as far as accountability and CTE, and so the CPAS ceased to exist at that point. So we are going to phase that out. The biggest part, this is actually the biggest revision that we're requesting. It is a additional portfolio and exhibit option in lieu of passing the end of course assessment. Only what we're proposing is that only the second semester of the child's senior year of the corresponding ninth grade cohort could a student enroll in, and participate in this portfolio option. It's a course that we will call Bridge to Career course, and students are only eligible with their cohort, what will be defined as their 8th semester or that last semester of their senior year. The corresponding end-of-course assessment must have been taken during every available administration, so students will have to assess when they take the class. They will also receive remediation and also sit for assessments whenever the school and the district administers that test. All existing options provided in lieu of end of course currently in Appendix A5 of the standards must be considered first, meaning we would look at the subscores on the ACT, we would look at dual credit with the C or higher, we would look at the concordance chart, everything that already exists in A5 to this point would be priority first. This would just be the absolute last option for students. We are proposing that you approve this along with our other suggested revisions. We would then take it to the state board on February 20th and return for final approval on April 17th after it's had an opportunity to go through a public comment phase. Upon approval, a set of standards with curricula will be written along with rubrics for scoring and disseminated to districts for use during the 25-26 school year. Okay, so we now going to move to appendixes A6 through A9. Remember, this is the traditional diploma and all of the endorsement options. We have a few minor changes there. References to compensatory has been changed to supplement, both in ELA and mathematics. References to accelerated English 9 and 10 have been removed. The state does not have a separate accelerated English or mathematics curriculum, particularly English. That does not mean that districts can't do that on their own in their own student package, but we do not have we do not have that as a state framework. We had a note there that the arts do include dance, media arts, music, theater, and visual arts. A lot of folks don't believe that the media arts counts. Dual credit in the CTE JROTC endorsement may be academic or CTE. We've told districts that in the past, and the reason for that is because we don't have as many CTE dual credit classes in our state, and so that opportunity can be taken on the academic side. And then finally, we wanted to articulate and clear up that work-based learning must be credit-bearing work-based learning. There are two types of work-based learning. There's the embedded, and then there's the credit bearing. Not every student does the embedded, and so in order for it to count here for the CTE endorsement, it must be credit bearing. And then finally, in Appendix A12 and 13, we basically went in and added courses, multimedia can be a requirement met for technology, art, advanced electives. Health science, of course, can count for science. There are some Project Lead the Way courses that a few schools use that we articulated to technology and computer science. Then at the bottom, we did add a reference to Cambridge and IB. We did not do that last year, so we did that. And then finally, we just added definition to the glossary. So those are the revisions that we proposed to the commission to then take to the board next week. I will be happy to entertain any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Clemens? Yeah, this is Ingrid Williams. I have a question. The portfolio option for graduation, the biggest change, how many students do you think that would apply to?
Well, it's hard to say. We're hoping it's going to be a fairly small portion of students because, again, we have all of the other opportunities for students to take advantage of during their initial 3.5 years in high school. This would apply to those students who have been in school, they have good attendance, they're
Thank you, Ms. Clemens.
Sure.
Next item. I'm sorry, I have another question. This is Ingrid Williams again. So, excuse me, because so let's say somebody was homeschooled for 11 years and they come in 12th grade. How would this affect them, for instance?
Well, if they're homeschooled and they come in at any grade, this doesn't change the policy for accepting homeschool students. The district still has to articulate the transcript for those students and determine placement for those students. So this doesn't in any way abridge that policy or change it in any way. This just, again, provides an additional in lieu of option for students who are required to take and pass the end of course assessment. This just gives them an additional in lieu of opportunity. But it doesn't really impact, per se, the transition of a child from homeschool into a public school setting.
I'm sorry, one more question. So, how did the request for this arise or the need for this to arise? Where is this coming from?
Well, it's something that I'll be honest with you, that we in the Office of Secondary Education, we've been looking at several different opportunities for students. Having been a former high school administrator, we do have students who do 13 years of public school education or various forms of education, and they get to that 13th year, and quite honestly, they can't pass a test. And so we've always been looking for opportunities for students who, like I said, they are responsible, they attend school, they maintain a decent grade point average, and they just can't pass that test. And so I don't think it's anything that just happened. I think this is just what we kind of landed on. We have oldies like myself, and we have new leadership, and so we just sat in a room and we thought about what would be the best case scenario for this small, very small population of students. And then we did some research. Of course, we researched other states and what they were doing. And so this is what we landed on. And keep in mind, we will be taking it to the board on the 20th, I think. Is it 17th or 20th? The next board meeting, and it will go out for public comment. I think that's important as well. And the Office of Secondary Education will try to do a really good job of making sure the public knows that it's out for public comment so that we can ascertain and collect as much feedback as we can before we take anything back for final approval.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna move.
I'm sorry. So you said you looked at how many other states have something similar to this?
Is this Ms. Williams speaking?
Yes, how many other states have something similar to this? This is my last question.
I know of 2 states that have something similar to this. There are several states who have a portfolio option in lieu of assessments of some sort. But I'll give you an example. Colorado, they have 12.
Sorry, go ahead. I can hear you.
Okay. I guess he or she did not like that answer. We have, I know, like, for example, Colorado, they give their schools like 12 different options, and one of them is a portfolio option. I want to say, it may not be New Hampshire, they have a portfolio option. But I will say that our portfolio option, we decided was going to be heavily based on career focus, so that those students in their second semester of their senior year can really begin to identify, this is what I think I want to be when I grow up, and then these are the positive steps that I have to take to be successful.
Thank you. Item 6 is for action. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve submitting a request to the State Board of Education to begin the Administrative Procedures Act APA process to revise Mississippi Admin Code 7-24.
Okay, yeah, and we do have a PowerPoint. I want to start by providing some context. In the past, we have done changes to the consolidated state plan, and those have gone directly to the board and then out for a public comment period before submission to the U.S. Department of Education. We're starting with the commission this time because we've had to change the order in which we make changes to the accountability system. As the commission may recall, there was an audit done by the Office of Inspector General regarding Mississippi's implementation of the ESSA Consolidated State Plan. And one of the results of that audit was that the department must seek approval from the U.S. Department of Education through the Consolidated State Plan prior to implementing changes to the accountability system. And so normally what we have done is made business rule changes to the accountability system that the department has seen as insubstantial. Minor changes to the business rules, changes to some accountability components that did not have a substantial weighting in the accountability calculation. And those changes were implemented prior to ESSA Consolidated State Plan updates. But this time we're going to start with the Consolidated State Plan update first and seek approval from the U.S. Department of Education. And because this is the beginning of the process to change the accountability rules, we're bringing it to the commission to review and consider, and then we will later come back to you with business rule changes. So the intent here is to get the process started with the U.S. Department of Education by submitting this change to the ESSA plan. We anticipate that they will provide a response on their side, hopefully before the fall. But we will bring business rule changes to you in late spring, early summer. So this first slide just talks about the changes that we're working towards implementing. And the first one is resetting the A through F rating standards for schools and districts. The commission may recall that there's a threshold in state law that requires a resetting of standards once a certain percentage of schools and districts are A or B rated, and we've reached that threshold for a couple of years. And the department is working with the Accountability Task Force and TAC to reestablish those standards. And we will bring those back to you when we do standard setting in the summer months after we get this year's assessment and accountability data. So today, what's going to be included in the ESSA plan will be the other 4 bullets here. So a new readiness component to replace acceleration in college and career readiness, updated annual goals for our EL progress measure in accountability, the removal of U.S. history from accountability measures, and changes to the exit requirements for CSI and ATSI schools for federal designations. So we'll start first with the readiness component. There's been a lot of work around this piece to address some requests for additional measures of performance in this area from various policy groups and the legislature. This is the model as it currently looks. We have, in acceleration, we look at performance and participation in accelerated courses, industry certifications, any of those post-secondary credentials. And then college and career readiness considers student performance on the ACT or the ACT work keys. So you can go to the next one. So this is what the new proposed readiness index would look like. There are a lot of pieces in here. As I mentioned, the intent was to expand measures in this component to recognize different possible completion pathways that students may have, in addition to continue to recognize the things in the model that are working, such as acceleration. You'll see in the top row is a continuation of the acceleration measures in participation and performance. This component will, for the most part, remain the same. The only change here that's being made is the removal of some fractional weighting in the participation piece so that participation reflects actual percentage of eligible students that are participating in accelerated courses. The achievement row, which is the next line, you'll see recognizes different completion outcomes for students. So we're adding in a recognition for students that receive a diploma in the 5th year, or receive a department-recognized GED or high school equivalency, I should say. We're working with our community college board to get data around a program that they offer for a high school equivalency. And so that's something that we're yet to flesh out, but this is the starting point. And then you'll see on those right two boxes over there, there's recognition for a traditional graduate, but then we're also adding in endorsements for college and career readiness. Career technical endorsement and ROTC endorsements. And then in the far right box is a recognition of the distinguished graduate. And then we're creating some indicators for what would be an equivalent distinguished diploma for a student on a career technical path or a JROTC pathway. And then in the bottom, continues recognition of assessments on the ACT and ACT work keys with the addition of recognition of SAT assessments and the students that take the ASVAB. And so you can see in these columns an incremental increase in the credit that's applied for students based on how they score on those various assessments. We've used some linking tables that ACT and SAT provide, as well as ASVAB, and some recognition of some meaningful recognition of scores on the ASVAB, such as that first one you see a 31, that's the minimum for entry into the Army. And then on the right-hand side, a 93 on the ASVAB is your top tier scoring on the ASVAB. Okay, we can move to the next one. So the other desire was that there was an increased weighting on the points around these measures of performance in the model. The Accountability Task Force discussed this at length and felt that they wanted to move the points from proficiency on U.S. history over to readiness. So this increases the weighting in readiness, as you can see, and these numbers are reduced by 5% for EL, assuming students have an EL progress measure. So, for example, if a student doesn't have enough EL students, if a school doesn't have enough EL students to measure EL progress, readiness would be 150 points in this setup. And speaking of English language proficiency, so this is a component that was added into the model with the enactment of ESSA in 2017.
there any questions? Please identify yourself for the record. Thank you. Hearing none, we'll move to item 8. Please identify yourself.
Patrice Gilfoyle has her hand up.
Yeah, I saw another hand up. I don't know if it was a carryover from the previous item, but I need more information about what was the rationale for getting rid of U.S. history. I just need to know that.